Before we start our podcast today, we'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting,
the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging.
I was going to start, but you're going to jump in.
Oh my goodness. I was going to start. So I'm going to start.
Okay.
Oh my goodness, people. Yelle's making an appearance and now Ash has come in because she's just going, what's happening?
Hello, my name's Kevin, and here's our next episode, Inward Journey episode, and I'm here with Janine.
Hi, I'm Janine, and today I think we're going to talk about grief, aren't we, Kevin?
We are, but it makes me very sad to talk about grief.
Of course it does.
Yes, we're going to talk about grief.
You wanted to start with a question.
So yeah, how do we make it go away? How do we turn it off? How do we resolve it? How does it finish? Does it ever finish?
Was that one question?
That's all one question.
That sounded like five questions.
There's a bit of yell came out there. I guess the real question is, for me, it's a personal thing. So, like, I've been dealing with grief it seems like a long time. And sometimes it's just part of my day.
Yeah.
And other times it feels overwhelming and I want to do what I just said, how do I stop this?
Which is interesting because the way you started to talk about it then, originally, and you said, a little bit of yell came out, it's mixed up the anger with grief. So I wouldn't call it grief.
Okay.
I would call that still anger because it's angry that this thing has happened to me. It's not actually in touch with your grief. And so that gives me the idea that you're still in a kind of a persecutory position, is like somebody needs to give me an answer here and what's the matter with you and you need to fix this. And it's almost victim persecutory role that we can all play sometimes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that happens to me, when I want it to stop.
Yeah.
When it feels overwhelming. Yeah. Other times, no, not so much. It just is.
Okay.
And I just let it be.
So go back to your original questions.
Yeah.
Well, what's one question if we just start?
How to be with it.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah. Which is really what the question was.
I remember a time when I went to a friend's place and her parents were there to help her move. And I watched her parents having this chat back and forth, and there was this lovely chat. They were talking about something that for them, and I think it was the plants in the backyard, and they were just having this lovely chat together. And at that moment, I felt really angry. And when I stopped and thought about it, and I can't remember whether I did that in the moment or I did it later, I'd never seen my parents have that quiet, gentle chat together and having that in front of somebody, and certainly not in front of me. And so I never had examples of those discussions that could happen between adults, and so needed to figure a lot of that out myself. So in that moment of remembering and considering myself, that's grief. Feeling for me of what I didn't know, perhaps even feeling for my parents for what they didn't know and couldn't tell me or show me around how to be. And so it's a soft place where I go, I didn't know, and I needed to work this out on my own or get some help because I didn't have those examples. So it's a quiet place of reflecting, and there could be with tears, it could be just a soft moment that you have with yourself. That's how I experience it. And sometimes it can happen in the moment and often. Mm-hmm. And it can happen regularly as you go through life. And that's around growing up, but it can be the grief or any loss that people are experiencing absolutely with a death or a separation or any kind of loss.
I hear what you've just said, but you also said what I was thinking as well. It does seem to be a tie-in between anger and grief. And I've always thought about it as the anger is protecting me from the grief.
Yeah.
So
well, it's protecting
like
you from the
I
grief.
move myself, if I move it aside, and the way that I move it as my anger aside would be to talk about it
Yeah.
in some form or other, and then I'm left with the grief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is the grief unsettling or uncomfortable?
It can be uncomfortable. At times, there have been times when I would rather be angry
Yeah.
than grieve, because the feeling was that it was a black hole and it would just swallow me up. So I couldn't let it be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not so much anymore. I don't get that anymore.
Often you hear people talk about, if I go down that track, well, then I'm just going to get swallowed up.
I can remember saying to you, sitting downstairs in your office, that, so if I start crying, what happens? Like, I'll never stop.
And I experience that, which is said often by many people, and many people will say that, I'm not going to start. But then often if you don't, the risk is that you'll either fill your life with anger that blocks it, or there'll be some other block with you as well. I'm not going to go there, but it'll not be experienced. And the risk is that you'll not see it in anybody else either. And so what happens is you cut those parts of yourself off. And so you cut those parts of yourself off from other people, and you cut parts of them off. I think that's a risk. And so you don't experience the depths of relationships or the connection, which we were talking about last podcast. And when I think about it, some of the ways through that is just experiencing a little bit. Just a little bit. Not all of it, just a part. Because
I get that.
if we just go with a part of the grief, then we're just going to honour that part of you that's missed out. That little bit. And it might be that moment. Does that feel more possible?
Yeah. And sometimes the bigger things are possible too. Quite often I'll be doing something, like walking along or driving along, and something hits me and I'll just stop the car. And I'll sit there and I'll cry, or I'll think about it and just be with it. And that makes it okay. I can carry on with whatever I was doing then. Like, I'm not explaining that. Like, there's no need for me to do something else. There's no need for me to be angry. There's no need for me to pick up the phone and phone someone. There's no need for me to read something. I can just sit there and be with it. And,
Yeah.
And unusual for me, I don't need to have anything after. I don't need to have any resolution. It just is. Yeah.
So I experience it as when I'm sitting with true grief, I'm actually sitting with a sadness for me about what wasn't, and also gratefulness around what is, around what I've learnt or the good things I have in despite of what I haven't experienced.
So, for instance, a close friend dying would fit into that.
Yeah.
Really, really sad that they're gone.
Yeah.
But also really grateful to have had them in my life.
Yeah.
That fits.
Of course, we're oversimplifying it. Maybe not oversimplifying it, but simplifying it in terms of starting to really consider working through. And for any grief that's experienced, if something is so great, so important, or so significant in your life, then the grief that's experienced has to equal it. It needs to be as important and as significant. And so if the thing that is lost is great, so will the grief be. And it's a beautiful way to honour the thing, the person, the event, the loss. Because what it's saying is that the event, the loss is so significant. And the tears or the moments or however you express your grief is honouring the thing that's lost.
So, how does that apply to bits of life that are lost?
Same.
Days, weeks, years?
Same. So it's like grabbing the moments. It might be just a noticing like, oh, I didn't know what that was like. That soft moment when someone goes to you, oh, you're adorable, and it's kind of like, whoa, never heard that before, didn't know that could be. And it's kind of like, whoa, okay, oh, that feels good. So there's this wonderful moment of, wow, that's wonderful, and damn it, I never had that before. But the damn it, I never had that before is that soft noticing and valuing what wasn't there. So it's honouring.
You didn't know it was missing until you had it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can remember the first time I walked into Elizabeth House and Amanda said, just hang around here. I'll just go, I went to get somewhere else. And I just stood there and it was nothing special. It was a nice house, but and I just knew that I was home. And I'd never felt that before. And I was right, I was home.
So when you say home, what did you mean?
I felt safe, warm.
Yeah.
Not alone.
Yeah.
That's not really just a physical thing because I hadn't met all of these people yet.
Yeah.
But the energy in the place already affected me.
Yeah.
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 So I had these feelings. And then I did get to meet most of the household after that. And yeah, there would have also been, oh my God, I didn't have any of this.
Yeah.
And now I have.
Yeah. And it's interesting, sometimes a really wonderful experience, a loving, safe environment like you just described, can actually ignite some feelings of, sometimes anger is the first one that comes to mind, and then underneath that is grief or shock. How has this been? How come I haven't experienced this?
Yep.
And then hopefully some experience around that of grieving, where there is a moment or moments where you grieve and then begin to experience the good things as a replacement of what hasn't been. And then that can be healing over time.
As we're sitting here talking about this, I've just realised I'm thinking, if we're talking about grief, I have to be really quiet and respectful and serious and that's just my opinion, really. Sorry?
I saw that happening.
Yeah. I'm remembering that we went to a funeral together. A lot of people went to the funeral.
It was a long time ago, wasn't it?
It was a long time ago. And I came outside, everybody was gathered around outside and all sorts of things happened for me. You walked up to me and hugged me. And later on told me that you did that because you felt safe with me. As we were standing there, I was aware that the sadness, that the grief I was feeling wasn't just about me, that I was surrounded by it. Everybody else was feeling something like that, maybe also feeling other things too, like anger or shock or whatever. He was a very much loved man. I'm sure it did come to a shock. It was a shock to a lot of us. So there was that moment of realising that it wasn't just about me, and also realising that I could be open to feeling that grief around me, and that it was okay to do that.
What was important about it? Noticing that the other people were grieving or having other experiences of grief, whatever it be.
That it wasn't just about me, that I was part of a whole group of people who were grieving and probably would be for some time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also that I could be that open about it and it was okay.
Yeah.
Whilst that was okay, there was like a line, a red line, and that if I crossed it, I went into avoiding the grief. So sometimes it can be just so painful that I shut that down.
Yeah.
I didn't do that on this particular day. And yeah.
I don't think you had an option to. When we came out of the service, I just grabbed you and I burst into tears.
I remember that.
Yeah. One of the ways I hold my own grief is I contain. And when I am finally safe, which is usually after I've done all the official things, all the things that need to be done, then I burst into tears. And when I'm finally safe, I let go. We had an experience on the weekend where we went and we spread my father's ashes under a gum tree. He had passed away last year. No, it was actually a year and a bit. And my brother and I spreaded his ashes under a lovely gum tree. And it was a wonderful experience in so many ways. It was joyful because that's what Dad wanted, and it felt beautifully respectful. And it wasn't until we got home I felt safe and let go and cried when I was able to do that. And that's just the way I know I experience my grief.
So what happens if we don't grieve?
Well, it reminds me of the Wendy Matthews in one of the songs where she sings, "We are ruled by the things we deny, the things we won't feel." And I think that's true, that in some ways it's built up and there becomes this block where you shut off or shut down to those experiences, and unconsciously you end up doing that to those around you. If I can't hear my own pain, if I can't be with my own grief, then I won't be able to hear yours or be with yours because it's too painful. And I won't have experienced it in my body, and I won't be able to sit next to you in your pain. I might sit next to you and pat you on the back, but I might not be with you.
So
Which
are
is
there
very
any
different.
consequences though? I guess there are. You just said there are.
Yeah, I think there are. The consequences can be sometimes getting on with life, but having just not experienced that closeness the way you can. I don't want to be prescriptive about it. I don't think that's the only experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's just what I understand.
I can remember that day at the funeral, and I can remember some other events. A close friend of mine died. He died of a brain tumour, and he was young. It was a while ago, and I mean, he was on the other side of the world, so I'd kept in touch as best I could, and he had as well. And I kind of had an avoidance thing when he died. I forgive myself for doing it. It was a long way, and I was busy, and it was very expensive to go, so I didn't go to his funeral. But then I did write something, which one of his sons read out at the funeral. That not long after that, I did go over, and his wife, his partner, was very gracious. I stayed with her, and she spoke quite a lot about him. And he had a favourite place. They lived in a beautiful area. And he had a favourite place. She took me there. They had a couple of dogs, and one with them was I'm not sure what breed he is, but he was gorgeous. His name was Cookie. And I took him out a few times. And he obviously had this area where he used to walk, and he just knew the way. I remember one day we got lost, or I thought we got lost, and I don't know, I have no idea how to get back to the house. I have no idea how to get back to the actual village. What will I do? I just noticed that the dog was fine with it. He just kept going, and so I followed him, and I realised when I got back to somewhere that I recognised that this would have been one of the journeys, one of the walks that my friend did with his dog.
How lovely.
It was fantastic and enjoyable, and also really, really sad at the same time.
Oh,
Yeah.
there's those different parts of grief that you can experience.
Yeah.
The joy of what was,
Yeah.
and then the loss as well. Yeah.
And on a sunny day, I went to his favourite place and sat there looking down. It was on the side of a hill, and beautiful, beautiful. And I imagine mostly it's very, very peaceful. But on the day that I'd chosen to go there were they had harvesters down there cutting all the corn. It was really noisy. It was a really, really, really noisy. But it had the same effect on me. I sat there for a while.
Yeah.
And I could just imagine sitting there with him. Yeah. And it was a really, really strong feeling, and it was really good. And it was also incredibly sad as well. It's a bit like I didn't go to his funeral, but I came to say goodbye. Yeah.
Okay. That feels like a healthy grief.
It was. Yeah.
I'm aware that we're talking about, in this instance, the death of somebody and the passing of somebody's, and a few people we've mentioned. And you have been a big part of the NA community, Narcotics Anonymous, and I imagine...
Or not available. NA stands for not available as...
Oh, okay. I haven't heard that one.
Sorry, no. Narcotics Anonymous.
Yep. And so within that community, you've experienced quite a few people that will have overdosed and are no longer in this world. And so I just want to acknowledge that for those people who have experienced that, whether it's a significant loss, just to, again, be really kind to yourselves as we talk about this. Go slow and gentle and start or get connected with somebody you feel safe with and be with where you can.
That's good advice. Yeah. Yeah, I lost count of the deaths. Even before I got to Narcotics Anonymous. So many since then in the last 18 years.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's why I wanted to mention it.
There is a but.
Yeah.
But it's just so fantastic. I know I've said this to you before, I haven't said it. Sitting in the back of a meeting, like, been around such a long time, we're almost like the furniture. You sit there and you see a new person come in and you whisper to your friend, they look really bad. They whisper back to you, yeah, I don't think they'll make it. Going to be very judgmental about it, but not in a horrible way. And then sometime later you're in a meeting and you see them again and they're no longer looking at the floor. They're able to look up and they have a bit of energy about them. Then you see them 9 months down the track and they're really involved with it and they're part of the community and they're looking quite healthy, and you hear them talking about going back to school, and yeah, you just see them come alive.
Oh, that's really exciting.
It's just really good.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
So being part of a community can have both those experiences.
Yeah, again, it has both.
Yeah.
People who don't make it and under some really sort of horrible circumstances, and people who you thought didn't have much of a chance, and they're in there.
Yeah.
Boots and all, and they're alive and they're well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great to hear.
Yeah. I was going to start, but you're going to jump in.
Oh my goodness. I was going to start. So I'm going to start.
Okay.
Oh my goodness, people. Yell's make an appearance and now Ash has come in because she's just going, what's happening? My family often laugh at me of a Sunday morning if we sit round this particular table that we're sitting here and we look out on the beautiful garden. And it's here of a Sunday morning when particularly my children or our children were here, and we'd have a breakfast, which was just wonderful, a shared breakfast. And we'd sit around and I'd cry. And I was having this wonderful experience and just having everyone around, and sometimes the frivolity and the silliness and just the sharing of the food and having everybody together and talking and smiling and sometimes arguing over things just was wonderful. It would make me cry because I'd be so grateful, and it was such a fun experience. And part of that is I never had that growing up, didn't feel like I had those moments of laughter all together sitting at the table. So it became a regular thing of a Sunday morning Mum would cry.
That's lovely.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah. I get those moments with my grandson.
Okay.
Yeah, with Phelan, my grandson. And usually when I'm alone with him and we're doing something, it doesn't matter what we're doing, he's just so in there, in the moment, and so intense and having so much fun. And I also get it. Narcotics Anonymous. Narcotics Anonymous has come up twice. We're doing other things, like particularly when we go out to dinner, sometimes after a meeting or something like that. And sometimes there would only be 2 or 3 of us. Other times there's 20 people. There's so many people that I don't even know them all. And it's just lovely. It's lovely. And the same thing as you said, that's what reminded me. Those are new experiences.
Yeah.
They're not experiences that I relate to before 1975.
So I think what we're actually saying is that grief gets us to really enjoy the experiences that we do have.
Oh, yeah.
That really
absolutely.
teach us to actually be in the moment
Yep.
and really enjoy the moments
Yep.
when they're there.
Yeah.
Because they can be taken away from us, and what we want to do is enjoy the people, the moments. And Ash has just come up with
I noticed that as well.
and she just tucked right into you.
She just put her head right into my arms just to make sure that I'm okay.
If you didn't know, Ash is my standard poodle. She's a black standard poodle, and she's just come up here and she's just tucked herself up against Kevin, and maybe she knows we're talking about grief. And so again, it's just that lovely moment of comfort that we get from her and she gives us.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
So thanks again for listening. We'll catch you next time. Go well, take care of yourself, and go slow.
Yeah, and it's really good that Yell wasn't here this time. Bye.
Are we sure Yell wasn't here?
Of course. Absolutely.
Take care, and we'll catch you next time.
See you soon.